Hello and welcome to Unmute with PRCAI, a podcast series from the communications world that hosts conversations with diverse business leaders and changemakers to craft a narrative of a bold India. I'm Niret Alva, a TV journalist, producer, director, anchor, and educator, and it's my privilege today to talk to a rather special guest. Consistently voted among the most influential persons in Indian media by the Economic Times, with a string of great product launches under his belt that include Ariel, Whisper, and Sprite, a seat on several industry boards that include FICCI, BARC, and ASCI, academic qualifications that include a BTech from IIT and an MBA from IIM Cal. Our guest is presently the equity partner and group CEO of India's largest independent media agency, Madison Media. Vikram Sakuja, welcome to Unmute.
An absolute pleasure to be here, Niret.
Yeah. Let's kick off with a question that you must have been asked many times before, but is always relevant. What does creative leadership mean to you?
Look, creative leadership is, I think, all about finding new solutions to maybe old or existing problems. So, I think you've got to see what the barriers to whatever your issues are and try to overcome the barriers with the kind of tool sets that we have available to us. And of course, just open up our mind. So I'd say, it's all about innovation. It's all about coming out with different solutions.
Okay. There are many nuances to leadership. There's leadership of self, of others, and of organizations. Can you share, Vikram, with us how you practice leadership across these different levels?
In leadership, at least for me, it's very important to have a pole star. If I don't know what I'm chasing, then basically I flounder. At any point in time, I think through most of my journey, it's been very important for me to have some kind of crystal clarity, laser sharp clarity, in fact, about what is it that I'm chasing. When I was leading Group M, I think there, we have WPP has got many agencies, and we really had to see how the whole has to be greater than the sum of the parts. So otherwise, sometimes in organizations, there can be a lot of pulls and pressures and stuff like that. So at least it got everybody on the same page, and I think we moved pretty well. I'm talking something which happened about maybe 15 years back. I think in Madison, I'm really obsessing a little bit more about what I call outcomes planning. I think the entire digital piece which has come into our lives has allowed us to actually, answer that question, which half of marketing works. And now it's with clients also asking the same question. I think to navigate that space, it gives us a very clear direction to go to. So that's where I'm after. And to that end, we sort of brought the organization together and stuff like that. So I think for starters, you need a pole star.
Okay.
Second is I think you need to so that's my self thing, I guess. It's also something which I then need to communicate. I think you need an A team. And so we have an exco, and I believe and it's important to have a management team. And they really, it's obviously you aren't going to get this done by yourself, right? So at that point in time, the team and getting them aligned and sort of encouraging dissent, but at the end of the day, getting alignment and then commitment, I think, is the one which is important. That step does require some amount of communication and getting together. So I'd say that is really it's quite simple actually. You just have to be clear. You need to have a team who sort of buys into your thing, and move forward. So I don't think it's much more complicated than that. And the third one is, of course, you've got to try to build a growth-oriented organizations. And then you've got to put your money where your mouth is and actually give them the challenges and the growth that actually make them feel, hey, you know something, maybe I'm growing more out here than I would somewhere else. Let's hang on for another year and another. And before you know it, you have a 15-year career.
Got it. Very nicely expressed, succinctly put. Just very quickly, because you've been in this career for over 30 years, and they say at the heart of effective leadership of companies and brands is effective communication. Can you share with us a little bit of how you've seen brand communication evolve over the years during the duration of your career,
The way I've seen communication evolve, and we can talk overall communication, but I'll actually get into my bias is a little bit more towards the media and go-to-market side of communication and marketing. So in the 90s, it was all about advertising and TV advertising primarily. and there was a lot about reaching people, how many times. The entire GRP word came in at that point in time, and it was all about awareness planning. So we were all very excited because we were actually trying to see a certain amount of science in what was really an art form up till then. So the 90s was all about trying to build you know the the awareness planning concepts into advertising. I think while of course it was happening all along, but I think the around the turn of the century, it was really the integrated marketing communication or central idea, and then you have a central idea brought around by several touch points and bringing that to life. So I think that was the one which really came in, and that's the time we really saw. I mean, FM flourished at that point in time, activation flourished, some amount of purpose marketing started. So you had a lot of this an idea which was actually brought to life. And then, of course, with the advent of digital, I think the important thing is here we have now got access to the complete what is called the marketing funnel and the full consumer journey. So now we've got the top of the funnel piece, which where you build awareness, a mid part of the funnel, which is about consideration, and bottom part, which is about actual performance or sales. I mean, who would have thought in 2000 that media is actually going to be a retail channel? And right now, there's a big chunk of our practice which is just doing selling for our clients, whether it's properties or FMCG products or what have you. So I think in terms of the communication process, I'd say awareness planning, IMC, and full funnel planning has been the way the practice has evolved. But I think the most profound communication trend has been that over the years, brands have finally started communicating. In the definition of communication is really closing the feedback loop. I mean, the communication isn't complete until you get a feedback. And all along, broadcast advertising was really a one-way communication, and you weren't really you're putting it out there and hoping for the best. I think we have now reached a situation where the feedback, yes, from a communication standpoint, I'm so glad to see we are hearing the consumer as much as we're talking to them now.
Vikram, would you say that the digital revolution has turned the creative world upside down? Can you just build on a little bit on what you've said earlier? You've already made the main points, but how dramatically that world has been changed by this digital revolution, if you can elaborate on a little bit?
Look, I think two things. One is, that there are when consumers have to make a brand choice, they do one of two things. There's a market presence, which is hugely salient brand, or you're getting it free, or it's omnipresent, and therefore you buy it. Very very strong distribution presence, that kind of stuff. Or it is that proverbial "I'd walk a mile for a camel" kind of thing, where you build a psychological equity. So beautiful brands like Parachute, Maggie, Vicks, all of them have been built on you feel something in your heart. And the entire aspect of building, taking psychological equity and taking it to a new level means you can charge a premium for a brand, and the brand actually forms a position in the consumer's hearts. That's what the essence of marketing, and that's what the holy grail really is. But really, what's happened in digital is, in earlier while we used to build brand love. That's my personal opinion. I think marketers have suddenly found that I can now use marketing to drive sales. This word called performance media. So you I now use any kind of the biddable platforms, and it's all about, if you have to look at it, if you'll just see the way advertising happens on the marketplaces, Amazon, Flipkart, so on and so forth. There's a lot of discounting happening there. There's a lot of if you bought this, then you buy this. So it's sales. So it's actually the kind of selling that used to happen below the line, and in the real world, or the physical world, brick and mortar world, is happening in a overdrive situation in online, and it's heading towards a much more discounted way. So I think, and this I think is coming at a cost of actually building the brand and the psychological equity. So on one level, you're buying sales, the entire, but you're buying it by almost discounting your brand. You're actually giving cheaper pricing on online, and you're using that money until you're taking it away from the budget of actually building what the brand is all about. So I think it's a slight come to Jesus point, where you're saying that do you want short-term sales at the cost of building a long-term brand and building it? And I think that's the fallout of that in the advertising world is, I find that the account planners or the brand stewards That's the role that agencies, and the creative agencies, really, not so much media agencies like mine, but creative agencies, we were the brand steward. And they would, I mean, the beautiful things like the the Titan jingle, or the Britannia ting 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 ting, and all the rest of it. Now, you have all of those things, and brands have been built on those. The entire Vicks vapor up, mother kid, that vapor that goes through the chest and through the nose and gives the relief. Now, these are all executional equities which have become, which have built these brands. And somewhere I just feel that people aren't spending so much time in building strategic and executional equities which actually give the brand meaning. And I think it's all coming down to short term sales. I used to lament about 15 years back that we guys are too fluffy in our advertising, and the American advertising that you see is much more sales driven. I'm now biting my tongue because people have now come back and sort of come back with a vengeance. So now they're only going and saying, buy me cheap, buy me cheap, and don't buy me tomorrow, buy me today, yesterday. And in the process, they're not actually saying what the brand is all about. So the one, I think, crisis is, and I'm also finding advertisers are now going in and between two campaigns, the ads look completely different, because you've gone to a, not even an agency, you've gone to a production house who's come out with a creative idea, and they may have just left the essence of the brand behind, because you've got two production houses who are not maintaining the what the brand really stands for. The conventionals, those FMCG marketers who've really written the marketing book, I think they're still a bit careful about this. But a large part of the other marketing space, I think, is losing the plot. So this is
Agreed.
one crisis. The second crisis, I think, not crisis, but I think the second challenge is that as the digital games comes in, the syntax changes. Let me just explain that. Across the years, earlier there used to be, I think, Niret, both you and I go back to the Doordarshan days. So,
Yes.
at that point in time, when post Asian Games, commercial TV, and we started seeing this stuff on Doordarshan, all the rest of it, we used to get plates that used to come,
Yes.
just like Fabina shooting Fabina, MRF 416, all that. There used to be just a voiceover jingle on a plate, which used to be the same plate which used to come through Dimple ads released in a cinema, and it used to come on your Doordarshan screen.
Yeah.
Then slowly that found its way into a proper TV 30-second commercial, and it took us some time, but it took us about 10-15 years, because it was very seductive. The entire craft of a 30-second commercial became the big one. And then when FM radio happened, because you couldn't make too much money in making radio spots, you used to take the sound edits of a TV commercial and put it on
Yes.
radio. And until then, the FM stations went and hired lovely, bright talent from creative agencies, and for the cost of a good creative radio spot, the cost of a media plan, gave the radio spot free, and that flourished. The point is that even today, for example, our outdoor guys get print renders from the to put on outdoor hoardings, and they have to say sort of adapt it to the local. My point is that every medium has its own syntax, and that in digital world is actually exploding. So if you are right now, take video. So now firstly, you can't air a 30-second. Yes, you can air very, very long form content, or long, even 2-minute ads, and some people do it. But it's कहने की बात है, because most of them are still really talking about less than 15 seconds if you have to really advertise on the internet. And you also have now the 6-second break bumper. Now, what needs to be the syntax to have a 6-second break bumper? Now, I think that's the part which, or for that matter, if you have to now move from video and you have to have an Instagram story, what needs to be the syntax there? How should you be on Twitter? Even search. I mean, actually, come to think of it, although search is used as a performance medium, I think there's a lot that can be done creatively on what your text ads and the search thing needs to be more productive. And that's, in fact, those are the areas where media agencies have actually become creative. And now I think the other two areas are, hyper localization and customization. It is increasingly possible to target 1.4 billion one at a time. Now,
Wow.
we are right now at a stage where we can move to cohorts and say this particular cohort, let's advertise. But it's, CRM and mass ad media or mass advertising, that difference can blur very soon. So it's at which point in time, how to make, I mean, you have, it's called dynamic creative optimization. But there's a machine way of doing it, and it's obviously you'll need some amount of machine stuff to do it because you can't. It's just humanly impossible to to customize at that kind of level or scale. But I think this it's still a little. I would say a little clunky, manufacturing, and when you're basically taking the same visuals, maybe changing one word here, one word there. It's not very elegant. But I think there's a process there. If you can actually, if somebody can crack it, I think there's a gold mine there. Likewise, on customization at a very hyper local level, I think there's a lot of there. So yeah, 4 or 5 things that digital has sort of upended for us.
Vikram, you've given us a complete, what do you call, playbook for digital communication, and that is quite a tutorial. Thank you for
No,
that.
they tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
If I knew how to do it,
Okay. So just quickly now, and now we have artificial intelligence at the table, right? It seems to have a creative brain that can put some of the best human brains to the sword. How will artificial intelligence, in your opinion, affect creativity, communication, and the creative industries going forward?
AI is actually taking the entire gestalt to whole, and in a nanosecond, it is just presenting to you what it could be. I think that's hugely powerful. But one without the other is, I think, completely. It's a very dangerous path to go down. Now, I don't know. I just read it. I found it more amusing, but it was crazy. I read in the paper just I think a couple of days back. There was a some lawyer in the U.S. who was defending his some client whose knee got knocked out by an aeroplane by the cart which the stewardesses sort of carry in a bang, and he was suing the airline. Now he went and presented in his thing a case history of some two, three, four, whatever cases in the past where this had happened. Went deeper into the case history, they found it was fictitious, and he had got it from one of these chat GPTs or generative AIs. Now he was obviously red faced about it, and I don't know what is the censure that he's going to face. But to me, that tells you how inane and how stupid it can be. Here's a lawyer who's otherwise probably a good thinking human being, but he's just taken a shortcut and with disastrous circumstances, with the consequences. Now I think that's the way you've got to look at AI. It's hugely powerful. I'll give you another example of this analysis synthesis. When my very first job was in Procter. So in PNG, there used to be this one-page memo. Any discussion, any issue sheet that we used to be, I mean, any that had to be one page, Arial, basically 12 font. So it can't be in that. You got to put down your entire issue. You got to put down the analysis of what's happened before, what your recommendation is, give that sheet out, and then people read it, and then you discuss and come out with a thing. Very good because it actually just got, now to write that one page memo. The first time I tried it, it took me some 10 iterations before I could squeeze it all into one page. Took enormously long. Over time, you learn the practice, and that is where analysis is becoming synthesis. Now, once I get the one page memo, and now that stayed with me, it's like writing a cycle, it's with you forever. So I think I can write a little bit more succinctly than maybe who haven't had that training. Now, I think it's important for before anybody uses AI to actually master that and then use AI as a tool. If you just don't know it yourself, use AI and then try to sort of say that is the answer, I think you're going to have a lot of problems. So I think use it as a tool, but not more than that.
Okay. And going forward, do you think jobs will be lost in the creative industries, or do you think that AI will just enhance the quality of the work that individuals come up with and teams?
I honestly don't know. Yeah. Look, the what is absolutely mundane and repetitive, I think that AI can take that kind of role. But anything which requires some degree of creativity, it requires making a mental leap. Look, AI is not very good at making mental leaps. It is at best as good at looking at whatever has been done in the past and regurgitating that. So I think the creative process will definitely not get threatened. Some of the more mundane jobs will. I'd like to. I'm an optimist, so I'd like to believe that there's further evolution of man. So I think that will hopefully get us to do more exciting stuff.
Vikram, you've always been a strong advocate of inclusion and diversity. Can you talk about your initiatives in this area and how you feel this can drive business growth?
Okay, I think inclusion and diversity, I think it's not only gender, I think it's gender and socioeconomic background. And I'm saying that because just like women in the workforce is something that is talked about, I think in the days of old, advertising at least used to talk about all you need to know is you should need to be part of a good club, drink a pink gin, and be able to write some good English, and you're in advertising. Like obviously, that is a anachronistic kind of view of that. But the fact still remains that there is some amount of socioeconomic barriers that come in the way of people coming in. So I think both of them are important to talk about. I think the first point, firstly, I believe in total meritocracy. So I don't believe in putting inside a work system of quotas of saying that just to have more representation, you have to give sort of a handicap to people for this. I think that's very demeaning for that person, and I would never do that. So it's meritocracy right through and through. That said, opportunity must be made available. On this point, I think the first and most important role is that of the family. Frankly, it's whatever in the workplace we do, the greatest enabler has to be the family when the child is growing up. If it's a girl, or for that matter, whatever be your background, the family has to instill in that person that you are here to make a mark in this world, a very positive mark in the world, and you will do it. And if they have that conviction about them, I think that is important. Nobody can do that in a workplace. That has to really come from that. It's a bit of nurture, whatever, but the nurture part is also important, which family gives you. That said, I've always believed hire for attitude, train for skill. So if you can actually get people who have that X factor, who have that drive, I think, and then after that, even if they're not the best at everything, I will feel that you can actually mold them into becoming A performers. And I think over the years, one has seen several cases of that, and it applies to both. It could be from a gender standpoint, it could be from a socioeconomic standpoint. I mean, I currently, if I have to look at the male female, I don't think we are. Madison is okay, but I don't think it's very good. I think we in the whole workforce we only have about maybe 30% or a little over 30% who are female. I would like that to be much higher. But at least if I have to look at my exco, my management committee, that number is closer to 40%.
Vikram, post COVID, there was this whole introduction of hybrid work models, people working from home, people coming in some days a week. Is this something that you consider when you run stuff, or have we gone back to the complete work from office kind of situation?
Oh, we've completely gone off work from home for quite a while now, and I'm not a fan from work from home. Not at all. I think the entire social capital, the social contract, which is essentially in an organization, gets terribly weakened from work from home. The entire game becomes transactional. Yeah, I mean, of course, one is completely open to certain transactional meetings happening virtually, but if you have to jam or if you have to create something or just even, I think the act of being together and just hanging around in the workplace corridor talk, all that is absolutely critical for the well-being of an organization. So I am completely unequivocally against the thought of tomorrow's organization can be completely hybrid remote. I don't know, then in that case, yeah, the social contract is going to go for a toss, and I think it'll augur very very poor times for strong organizations. There are some clients of ours who are doing 3 days a week and 2 days from home. Currently, we are working all 5 days from office. If somebody wants to take an exception and go there, yeah, we aren't stressed about it. But the norm is office working.
Okay. Vikram, let's shift gears a bit to talk about brand India on the global stage. What are we doing right and how can we enhance our image?
Okay, look, I think brand India, and from a corporate standpoint, I think we've we've over the years really stamped our class and dominance when it comes to management. And I think there's been a number of global CEOs of corporations, and I think what comes across is the analytical strengths of Indians and the P&L delivery that typically Indians. I think the work ethic that we have and our focus and our I just feel that our education and the way we built it, we are much more result oriented, which most corporations love. And I think now increasingly that is increasing. On the creative side, I think since we're talking advertising and all that, there, I think there are, of course, our wonderful Piyush Pandays and Prasoon Joshis and maybe Josie Pauls to some extent who've actually hit the world stage in a very, very, very good manner. They are global creative chairmen of their companies, and their presence is highly respected, and I think that's fantastic. But there is a point overall that we're talking about 800, $900 billion global ad market. The large part is still North America and Europe. And within Europe, maybe the English speaking UK and all the rest of it has probably got more than its fair share of voice in that. So I think the narrative is still being shaped there primarily because the center of gravity is there. I think there was a time and everybody is talking India, China, all the rest of it. I think the COVID has given a slight, the China narrative has come down a bit over the last 2, 3 years since the pandemic started, but it's inexorably going to go that side towards India and China. So I think it's just one of those things. I think that it's a cultural thing. Creativity is a very cultural thing. So I think so the sensibilities and everything else, people really get it a little bit more. I mean, you could say the same thing about Oscars and stuff like that. India always we make some great movies, but we somehow struggle to win Oscars. And we, but and I think to some extent it's also a cultural narrative. So you have to go there, lobby, all the rest of it. But I think we'll get there. I think we definitely have the talent. We have the kind of work that we turn out is there. I think from a creative standpoint, we are a bit under indexed. On the business management side, I think we are basically all guns blazing. So I think yeah, that's how I'd like to put it. But I think the future of brand India is very sanguine.
Okay. Just a quick talk a little bit about you, the person. You define yourself as a media man, foodie, movie buff, and compulsive cricket watcher. How do you manage to pack all this into a day?
No, no, no. I'm pretty jobless. I watching cricket. I also watch. I also watched. Actually I'm a compulsive live sports watcher. I even watch darts. But yesterday I watched Djokovic. Look, so I'll have you say because I'm also a very strong India fan. So and I also when India collapsed yesterday, I felt pretty sad. So it had gotten over by then, but I still prefer the Djokovic match to anything else. And I watch sport. I like great food. I like meeting friends. Yeah, I like working also. So yeah,
Okay.
it all fits in. I am. This is not a. I don't think there's any hack to this. Yeah, this is. I think we all do it.
Okay. Okay. So, just as a seasoned professional and a successful professional, can you share some thoughts on work life, family balance? How have you practiced it in the past, and what's your advice to those who are just starting their careers?
No, there's something I haven't been good at, and now at least at this stage of my life, I'm consciously making an attempt to just tune off from work and get back to family because that's family is what's more important. And I think this is something that Gen Z gets so well. So I think we were all Koluka bells when we were young, and we pretty much had this Karam Yogi streak in us, and we stayed that way. I don't think I think that's a little overrated. So I really think the Gen Zs, whatever they're doing, I think their balance is just about right. So they have no problems going back and telling their bosses, "Listen, guys, I now need my own me time. I'm going to go there," and I actually respect that. So my advice is don't do everything that don't. I mean, just don't do what I did and start actually spending much more time balancing your time early in your life. I've learned late, but I am now sort of amending. I'm overcorrecting, shall I say?
A question that I meant to ask you, Vikram, that I sort of forgot, and I'm just going back to since we were talking about communication and different forms of communication. One way of reaching out to people that has its share of detractors but has been highly successful is the Prime Minister's Man Ki Baat program, right? where the Prime Minister of the country reaches out to hundreds of millions of people and talks to them directly. What's your take as a communications professional on that form of communication, and how do you think it has worked?
He's such a great communicator. What do I say? I think probably Mr. Modi is he's such a great marketer. So because at the end of the day, people want to hear what their leader are thinking, and every week to sort of take time out, take whatever issue is sort of you've been thinking about in the past few days to actually just give your two bits on that. I think it is such a powerful device, and hats off to the man. Yeah, he just manages week after week. He's been doing this now for I don't know when in his 9 years he started, but I don't think he's missed a Sunday. So I mean, hats off. I mean, we guys are supposed to do our own town halls, and even that we don't do them as often as we should.
Vikram, thank you so much for this wonderful freewheeling chat. Before I close, and before I finally say goodbye to you, I now throw to Deepti Sethi, CEO of PRCI, to ask you her burning question of the day.
Thank you, Niret. And Vikram, welcome again. Great conversation with on the Unmute with PRCI. You were earlier talking about the purchase funnel, right? And I've grown up to the time when we were saying 15 years back that the lines between marketing and public relations is blurring. Do you think marketing and public relations are two sides of the same coin?
No, the public relations is definitely a part of marketing. The question is, what is its relation to advertising? It's very intrinsically a part of marketing. But in advertising, I think there's a fundamental difference. Advertising is simply the brand telling the consumer what the product can do. So it is company speak. That's what the consumer sees, right? Here's a brand spot coming on and companies talking about itself. This is what it is. PR, on the other hand, is somebody in some form or the other. It's a editorial talking about the company. So the company speak goes out of the picture. And which is why in the early days, people used to say anything which comes from public relations has got so much more legitimacy and therefore is worth maybe 3 times the or 6 times or whatever it might be that whatever the cost of the ad spot may be and all that kind of stuff. But the point out there was the legitimacy that comes in when it comes from a external so-called objective editorial source. And I think that part, so if I have to say they are complementary, public relations is actually complementary to advertising. The key part, however, is authenticity. So in the past, sometimes PR and there's been PR and advertorials, and when you can see through the editorial part and it becomes an obvious plug, then I think actually forget 6 times the effectiveness, it becomes minus 6 times effectiveness because then it's a very obvious plug. And I think some of the publications possibly have gone a bit too far when they've taken their paid editorials. So I think that's what hurts. But in its pristine and as it was intended form, PR is a very, very powerful source. At times, PR, I think, you can do with PR that what you can't do with advertising. I mean, take Red Bull and that Baumgartner's Edge of Space jump here. So at that point in time, obviously, here you have a guy who's standing at the edge of space, sponsored by Red Bull, and the entire thing is just captured editorially. Now, you want to call it event, you want to call it PR, you want to call it editorial, but the entire view is glued to that piece of authentic live action, and that was crazy. And it probably does more to the brand than I don't know how many whatever advertising might attempt. So there's obviously a role for public relations. It's very clearly a part of marketing, but it has to act in a complementary manner to advertising.
Vikram Sakuja, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. We've covered so much ground in such a short period of time. I guess that's only possible when you're talking to a media man. Thank you for being on Unmute with PRCI.
The pleasure is absolutely mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Vikram.